Actually not the sermon. This is just an extended announcement this morning. So, we get nice and comfy. And how many of you received an email from me this week about a special announcement for the church? So some of you are in the loop, some of you aren't. If you're not in the loop, I would strongly encourage you to get on our email list. That is our main way of communicating to the church. And communication is obviously really important in the life of the church. When something happens, it's important that we all kind of know about it and are in on it. So I wanted to take some time, though, to kind of talk about that announcement during the service. And we'll have a chance to pray about it and stuff. So just if you haven't read it yet, maybe I'll just get to the point here. Last week, I sat down with our landlord here at 5 Crescent Road, and we had a conversation where he said it was time for us to wind down our current rental agreement here. So as a church, we are beginning the search for a new home. And though that might seem a little daunting, it's actually quite exciting. And I think as we met as leaders this past Tuesday, there was a real sense of peace and excitement that God was up to something, that God was doing something cool, and that this was the right time. So we're here at least till summer. We'll try to make the move in September. So our tradition is always to go outside for the summer, for July and August. We do our services downtown in the park. And I'm just checking my email. No, just kidding. I'm turning the air conditioning on. Or actually, could someone else do that? It's hot in here, isn't it? Is it like 100 degrees? Can someone turn the AC on? You don't know how? Okay. All right. I can do it. I can do it from my phone. So the heat's at 60 right now, but the AC is not on. So, yeah. Yeah, you guys don't mind that I'm doing this, right? Yeah? Okay. I did it. It's done. Look at that. So, yeah, I mean, we're on our way out anyway. We can spend that money on air conditioning. I know, I heard him. That was James's thing. So, anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make is we're looking for a new home, and that's an exciting thing. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit and have some time to pray together as we begin a journey that'll be, something that lasts for a few months for us, I think. I wanted to read a passage that I shared with our leaders on Tuesday night from Numbers 9, starting at verse 15. Numbers is an obscure book of the Bible that talks about the Israelites' early days and has a lot of laws and stuff like that in there. But let me read this for you. It says, on the day the tabernacle, the tent of the covenant law, that was like their porta temple, was set up, the cloud covered it. From evening till morning, the cloud above the tabernacle looked like fire. That is how it continued to be. The cloud covered it, and at night it looked like fire. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. Whenever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped. At the Lord's command, the Israelites set out, and at his command, they encamped. As long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they remained in camp. When the cloud remained over the tabernacle a long time, the Israelites obeyed the Lord's order and did not set out. Sometimes the cloud was over the tabernacle only a few days. At the Lord's command, they would encamp, and then at his command, they would set out. Sometimes the cloud stayed only from one evening till the morning, and when it lifted in the morning, they set out. Whether by day or by night, whenever the cloud lifted, they set out. Whether the cloud stayed over the tabernacle for 2 days or a month or a year, the Israelites would remain in camp and not set out. But when it lifted, they would set out. At the Lord's command, they encamped, and at the Lord's command, they set out. They obeyed the Lord's order in accordance with his command through Moses. A little repetitive there, perhaps? You get the idea. God led them one step of the way, right? Whether that was for a day or a month or a year, they just followed the cloud. And I think that the reason it's so repetitive is because the person writing it down was trying to drive home a point, that God was faithful and led them each step of the way. So for those who haven't been part of MCC for a very long time, this might be the only home that you know for us. But actually, I wanted to kind of review our history for you. So MCC actually started back in 2007 as a small group in our home. And I've got some pictures to show you here. Let's see. Where did they go? Right there. So here's the earliest picture I could find of an MCC meeting, okay? So that's Liz and Rob when they were over here on a teacher exchange from England. And I think that was some sort of a group or event. I'm not sure what it was, but I included it for fun. Our very first public services were held in Arrowhead Provincial Park. We did a church on the trail in the summer of 2008. Did that happen? Yeah. And then there's me teaching a group of people out on the trail. And then during that summer, we were looking for a location, and we landed at Riverside Public School. And that became our home for quite a while. This is a picture here of our very first service, okay? That was before we launched. We had sort of a practice service. We had some friends come up from our last church, and they led worship for that. This is a picture of the very first launch Sunday, like the public launch Sunday, people coming in. I remember some of you, that was your first time. I remember meeting Christine in the lobby on that Sunday with Audra. Anybody else come in for the first time to that launch? Steve and Paula, were kind of around there, yeah. So we met in there. We had sent out a flyer, and it was like, wow, who's going to show up? And we met in there for a while. There's Adventureland. I got this one just for Aiden and Jacob. Look at that. And even at an early age, Aiden and Jacob were already playing tricks. So Aiden's got the wrong name tag on there. So this was at our 1-year anniversary. The band had grown a little bit by then. This is more of the 1-year anniversary here. Eventually, we decided to move from that curtain side over to the stage side. So there's a picture of when we set up on that other side there, the kids doing a special thing. I think that might have been at Easter or Christmas or something. And then eventually we decided that people weren't coming out to Arrowhead Park in the summer, and so we moved our summer services into town, into Rivermill Park, where we have them now. And so we started setting up there at Rivermill Park. And about 3 years ago, almost exactly 3 years ago, our leadership team started talking about finding a different space. That the school was in some ways good in that it was a public, comfortable space, but it was too big for us, especially at that time. It was just like this cavernous place with a little group in. Somehow the big ram's heads on either side of the stage seemed like we were worshiping idols or something. I don't know. But mostly we were just getting really tired of setting up and tearing down every Sunday. There was sort of a sense of exhaustion. And we started to feel like maybe God was leading us, at least to look around a bit and see what we could find. And so we found this building here, that it was just sort of sitting empty. But the rent on this building is over $100,000 a year, which is more than our annual budget. And so it looked like, no, there's no possibility of it. But we approached the landlord and we said, it's sitting empty. How would you feel about us using it for this piddly little amount while you continue to advertise it for lease? And so we came up with an agreement to rent it on a month-by-month basis. And that was a complete miracle and a huge answer to prayer. I remember sitting out on those front steps there and just with a few other people just taking it to God and saying, God, we'd really like this building. Like what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, saying, please, here's what we'd like. We'd like to be able to have sort of a permanent space. We think this building would work well for us. And so we asked God, and God answered, and through the incredible generosity of our landlord, we've now been here close to 3 years. We weren't sure. It's been a month to month the whole time. We weren't sure if we're going to be there for 6 months or, and get kicked out or what. And we've kind of done some work along the way. I'll show you. This was taking out, there used to be a room kind of right here. You can see the remnants of that room up on the ceiling there. There's another better picture of it. So we did some destruction work. And so when we first came in here, we set up like that. So our stage was kind of down there, and there's another room there and another room there. And then this summer, we did some more work with the help of the Open Door, and we did we moved it to this setup here. So that was in August this year that we did all that. And so now we're to here. So you see the journey that we've been on. Some of you haven't been on that journey with us. And so I wanted to let you know that this church, we've been a lot of different places. We've been, in different setups, and we've been the same church all along. I think we've matured over time. We've obviously added lots of great people over time. But we don't need to be afraid of the cloud lifting and finding a new place. God has always provided the right spot for us to work. And so we're just looking to see, okay, God, what do you have next? Let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, the current process. Let me talk about the process. The process is, I don't know how to clear that. All right. Well, you're going to have to look at it over that. Oh, thank you. Teamwork. All right. So the process is this. First of all, we want people to pray, okay? That's all of our job. We take this to God. We say, God, we want to find out where you have for us next. Please provide for us. Please provide wisdom. Please open doors. Please provide what we need to get the right next facility, okay? Now, we're also assessing our current needs. So we're having all of our ministry leaders, the leaders of our ministry teams, tell us what they need right now and what they see themselves doing like in 3 to 5 years. You know, where is this going? What kind of needs are you going to have in 3 to 5 years? So we're assessing that. We're investigating and evaluating our options. And we have formed a special team for that. We wanted that team to be kind of small because we think that when decisions like this are made, sometimes it's hard to have 100 people all talking at once. And so we have a small team of Paul Britton, Mark Campbell, John MacArthur, Kathy Lewin, and Ferd Regier, who are working on investigating and evaluating the options based on what the ministry team comes up as needs. And so, by the way, we did try to make it small, but if you think that you have a call that you'd like to be on there, we'd be certainly open. It's not somehow a closed or private team, and we want to hear everyone's voice in this. So what kind of options are we looking at? Oh, by the way, the next options would be discern and decide. Hopefully by the time we break for the summer, we'll know where we're going in the fall, and then we'll have the summer to pack and move, which that'll be something we want everyone to be a part of. Anyway, what kind of options are we looking at? Well, we could go back and do like a space kind of like the school where we just rented on Sunday mornings. But that had its drawbacks. It had its good things, but it had its drawbacks. And so I'm not sure that's our first choice. We have seen that having a space that we call our home does a lot for building community. Our potlucks, our ability to hang out after the service without stressing out about setting up and tearing down. Having a space allows us to bring people in for certain events like Alpha, and we held a Bridges Out of Poverty workshop here. And there's just stuff that we can do. We had a concert here. It's a tool, right? A building for us is a tool. And so we might look at just renting stuff on Sunday mornings, but more likely looking at another kind of long-term lease like this. And then the other option that is on the table, though, is unlikely. But I'm telling you this just in case you see something. I don't want us to rule anything out. There is a slight chance that we could be in a position to buy if it was the right price and God opened up some miraculous doors. Yeah. So, but there are some possibilities there. I want to make sure that you know that. So, because what we want you to do is have your eyes open. And we want you, if you see something around town you think might be a possibility, to email. We have a special email set up. It was in the newsletter this week. It's just facilitysearch@muskokacommunitychurch.com, and it'll go out to that team that I just read about. You're not going to get a personalized reply for each thing. And when you think about what you might be a possibility, remember that we need space for Adventureland, at least 4 separate rooms for our kids' ministry. We need lots of parking because people don't come if they can't park, right? And so there are some certain things that we need to keep in mind. It's not just about the meeting space. But send us the options, and they'll get, I promise you that we'll hear you whether we respond or not. And, of course, like I said at the beginning, we need to pray. We need to bathe this whole process in prayer for God's wisdom, His leading, His direction, and His miraculous provision for us. In the meantime, here's what I have to say. Churches can get focused on buildings. Even churches that don't own buildings can get focused on buildings. And when we moved into this building, I remember giving a big speech about how we can't let that happen. And I don't think we have. I think we have done a good job of using this building as a tool for ministry and not getting caught up in all the ins and outs of it. And so I would encourage us in this process not to get caught up in the search for the new building. Ministry teams, we want to be able to continue to go on doing ministry. Me as a pastor, I need to be able to go on pastoring. And so that's why we've kind of handed this off to a separate team. And let me remind you that we are a church that is here to try to help people experience God, so have this spiritual connection with God, follow Jesus, begin to shape their lives around His teachings, love each other, build a sense of community, and serve the world. We're here to serve our community, not to serve ourselves. And we want to be out there doing good right here in Huntsville and beyond. That's who we are as a church. We're here to help our community. We're here to serve. We're here to reach out to people who might not feel comfortable in another church, because we believe that the good news is Jesus is for everyone, And we want to make that as accessible as we can to people who aren't as likely to show up in church on Sunday morning. We want to be a church eventually that plants more churches, that starts churches around, I think, in smaller towns, but in Ontario and maybe beyond. We want to be able to do that. And so if a building can help us do those things better, then we want a building. If a building becomes a hindrance to the mission and vision that God has given us, then we don't want a building. It's as simple as that. A facility facilitates the call that God has given us. And so let's make sure that we don't get distracted by this, that it doesn't become a source of, anxiety or division or anything like that. And let's just make sure we bathe the whole thing in prayer. So the songs that we do here, I see as prayers. When we sing songs, I see them as prayers that are set to music because music, I think, expresses something that just words sometimes struggles with. And so we have a couple songs that we're going to do in a minute here that I've specifically chosen to go along with this idea of, God, where are you taking us? But first, what I'd like to ask is for 3 volunteers, maybe one from each section here, who would pray out loud, just a short, simple prayer, offering this whole situation to God and beginning this process of praying. So if you would be willing to do that, would you raise your hand? Anyone? Okay, we got one. Can I get a second? Anyone willing to pray out loud? I got a second, but both from the middle section. Are we going to allow that? Yeah. What about our side sections? You're on the wings here. Is anybody going to pray from there? Okay. All right. So let's pray,